space race of the 1960s was in response to an event. If you breathe a word of what you've seen here, it will do time for treason.
Everything humans know of our planet, we were told, had been shared. You lied to us. You've made a grave mistake.
Hello everyone and welcome to yet another look back at a Transformers film. Today I'm taking a look at 2011's Transformers Dark of the Moon, released on July 1st. Even though Wikipedia tells me that it was released on the 28th of June, I guess that's, like the premiere date, but, all the trailers from the time say July 1st, so that's what I'm going with. So, yeah, this is the third Transformers movie in the Michael Bay live-action franchise, a franchise that spans 5 movies and no more, even though people will probably argue about that, and will probably continue to argue that because of the way Rise of the Beast is looking to be turning out, and oh boy, I'm not looking forward to that at all. But we're not talking about that today. Today we are talking about Dark of the Moon, and before we do that, I do want to provide a really, really quick update on Transformers Knights of Cybertron, my stop-motion series, because if you're watching this video on my channel, you probably watch some of the stuff on my channel for my Transformers stop-motion series, and, well, it's been a little over a month, and where is it? So far this year, I've been getting episodes out monthly, but then in June, so I released one in May, but then in June there was nothing. There's a reason for that. It's not because I've gotten lazy. I've been working a lot on my Ninjago stop-motion project, and I'm, as of this recording, like a day away from getting that completely wrapped up, yay. And then the release dates for those are going to be monthly in July, August, and September. So that takes care of major stop-motion projects on my channel for those 3 months. So Transformers will be taking a little break. It will return in October, I want to say. I'll probably put it out in like the mid of the month, something like that, just so it's not that as much a long wait. And when it does return in October, it will be airing weekly instead of monthly like it had been. So for 5 weeks, you will get 5 new episodes, and that will finish out season 1 or chapter 1. That will help considerably because the second half of chapter 1 is really kind of just one story, unlike the sort of kind of like episodes 1 and 2. It was one story split between 2 episodes, and then episodes 3 through 5 were kind of separate in their own thing. The second half of chapter 1 is really kind of one long story that really feeds into it itself. So releasing that monthly would not work very well, I don't think. So I'm partially taking a break to finish up Ninjago, and also to make sure that all those episodes are done and ready for release in October, and then probably midway through November, 5 weeks. Might even reach into December, who knows. We will see. So whenever I have those ready to go and I have a premiere date in mind, there will be a mid-season trailer that has new and old footage in it to kind of get you caught up on where we are in the story of Knights of Cybertron and what you have to look forward to in the second half of the season. So yeah, that was my quick little update on Transformers stop motion news, and now we should talk about Dark of the Moon. This movie to me is really the one that my opinion has kind of shifted and changed a lot on over the years. Because in some ways, I feel like this is maybe, in terms of a quality product, which is not something a lot of people think Michael Bay puts out. I'm on the fence about that myself, but I think he's a better director than people give him credit for a lot of the times. But in terms of quality product, this might be, in essence, the best of the Transformers movies. It's this or one. A lot of people think it's either this or one. I, of course, always will, to the end of time, throw my hat in the ring for Age of Extinction as well. But I do recognize that movie has a lot of problems. And for a lot of people, the good does not outweigh the bad, and I totally understand that. So I usually concede the point, even though personally I think Age of Extinction just has a lot of good going for it, despite the bad stuff in it. Dark of the Moon, I feel like it does have a lot of good in it. For instance, like the second half of the movie is like a straight up, just pure action. There's not a lot of story for Michael Bay to get all hung up on and confused about and stuff like that. It is pretty much straightforward. All right, let's infiltrate this destroyed city and blow stuff up. So it being a little more straightforward kind of helps it out. But there's a couple things that makes me go, that really brings this movie down a little bit for me. And part of that has to do with the human characters. Let's just jump right into Sam Witwicky in this movie. Shia LaBeouf once again returning for the last time to play Sam Witwicky. Unlike a lot of people, I don't mind this character most of the time. If you watched my, and you can, by the way, I've made, as I've mentioned at the very top of this, I do have 2 other videos like this. One looking over Transformers 2007 and Revenge of the Fallen, released on their respective 10-year anniversaries in 2017 and 2019, respectively. So you can go back. I do have a playlist with both of those videos in it, and then this video will be added to said playlist as well. So if you want my full thoughts on those 2 movies, you can go back and watch them if you haven't already, or if you need a refresher. But so I did skim through my Revenge of the Fallen video just very briefly before I started doing this, and as I said there, Sam Witwicky is never a character that's really bothered me the way other people are bothered by him. Some people find him obnoxious. Maybe it's just the age that I am, the era of movies I grew up in. A lot of characters were like this, so maybe that's just what I gravitated towards because there was just a lot of them. Perhaps, I don't know. I've just never really minded Sam Witwicky that much, and some of the outbursts or stuff that he does that some people don't like, I can point to and go, well, there's story reason for that. His brain kind of got cooked by the Allspark fragment, and so he was never really right since. So there's a lot of moments in this movie where he is normal, but then there are a couple small moments here and there where he just totally flips out and does some weird stuff, and that is very much me going, okay, that's residual effects from the Allspark fragment cooking his brain in the previous movie and filling it with to make a comparison to another Transformers property, Transformers Prime Season 1, when Bulkhead gets the information from that data stick stuck in his head, and then he starts working on the equation to synthetic energon, but it's slowly eating away at his processor until eventually there would be nothing of Bulkhead left. So I kind of feel like it's sort of the same with Sam, except just instead of completely overtaking his mind and making him spit out equations, that's mostly been remedied, but it does lead to the occasional spaz attack. A big one is whenever he and Carly, we'll get to Carly in a minute, whenever Carly go to Nest, about midway through the movie, and is it midway through the movie, or is it midway of midway? That is one of this movie's long. Actually, I feel like in some ways this movie, to me anyway, feels longer than Age of Extinction, even though Age of Extinction is almost 3 hours long. One of the problems with it, but we'll talk about that in 3 years. But this movie does feel long. It's I go, oh, we're halfway through this. Oh, we're only a third of the way through this. Oh my gosh, there's a lot of movie here to talk about. And so Sam and Carly go to Nest, and Sam's going, Decepticons are back, I need to talk to Optimus, can you get Linux out here, blah, 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 and he's talking so fast, and it's like, he's yelling at the guards, and it's yeah, it's stressful, he was attacked by Laserbeak earlier in the day and stuff, but, there's several moments in this movie where he's doing weird things with his eyes. When he and Carly had the argument outside of Gould's office, earlier in the movie, he does this thing where he's talking to Carly and he's just got one eye squeezed shut and he's pointing at her, and then he does the same thing at Nest when one of them slaps the hood and he goes, "Do not touch my car, it's a collector's item." And he's got one of his eyes squeezed shut for whatever reason. Again, it's one of those things where I look at it, I'm like, okay, going with the story, it's just, this has to be residual effects from the Allspark fragment. If Revenge of the Fallen had happened and that had not happened to Sam, and then they were just following clues that they had to uncover, and there was not this alien artifact that had zapped information to his brain, then I would have been going, why is he acting like this? These are some really weird, some really weird acting choices here. But I mean, there's story reason for it, so I kind of accept it. Even it's like, oh, this is entertaining. I'm entertained. It's kind of. I'm not going to use the word charming. It's I wouldn't say charming, but it's entertaining. I mean, it's goofy, it's out there, but I like it. And I understand why some people maybe wouldn't, but I like it fine. I think it's kind of funny, especially when they're at Nest and then the little rails go up and it tips the car forward and he's just screaming "Whoa!" As only Shia LaBeouf can, and he wrestles with the guards. It's like it's one of those like. I don't know. I just kind of find it. I just find kind of like those antics. I wouldn't necessarily repeat any of those antics in one of my own scripts, but for what that character was at that time, after what he had gone through in the first two movies, it's like, I don't know. This seems on brand for the character. I'm fine with this. So yeah, he's never really bothered. So getting back to my point here, he's never really bothered me that much. In terms of like his behavior or stuff, but I do have a problem with Sam Witwicky in this movie, and that is really his kind of story arc in this movie. And I feel like it doesn't really work for a number of reasons. But I don't think that's necessarily the fault of the movie or of the script. I feel like Sam's story not working in this movie really does have a lot to do with the fact that Megan Fox does not return as Michaela Baines in this movie. Instead, she was replaced by Rosie Huntington Whiteley, I think is her name, as Carly Spencer. And I think that really creates a lot of problems for the human, Sam's arc plot in this movie, where if Michaela had stuck around for a third movie, or if they'd even, recast her, but it was still the same character, it maybe would have been a little odd. But, it's still the same character, so we have that continuity there. But, hey, continuity in a Michael Bay Transformers movie? What is that? Of course, get to that later. But I feel like it would have worked a lot better if they'd kept Michaela around, because, as I said 2 years ago, talking about Revenge of the Fallen, it is a little weird going from the whole subplot of Sam and Michaela in Revenge of the Fallen is, are they at a stage in their relationship where they want to say I love you to each other? That is literally their story arc, which is like, why is this in a movie about giant robots fighting a war? I don't know. I get, it's one of those things where these movies are not necessarily always meant for Transformers fans. They throw in things here and there. It's like, oh, here's the Dinobots. Oh, here's, here in Revenge of the Fallen, here's Devastator. So we got combiners now. Stuff like that. They throw stuff like that in there for fans, they dig into the mythology and stuff. But at the end of the day, these movies are supposed to be for as big an audience as possible. So that means the 12-year-olds going to the theater. That means the adults that grew up with Transformers in the 80s going to the theater. Grandpas, the teenagers going to see it with the girlfriends on dates and stuff. It's like, so it needs to have just like a little bit of everything for everyone in there. And so that does, on occasion, lead to some problems in terms of what I'm looking for in these movies, which is I want to see giant robots fight each other, and dig into the lore a little bit. So, me as a fan of these giant robots fighting each other, I do kind of sit here and think, why do we have this love plot going on of our, this is a soap opera. I mean, the plot line here is straight out of a soap opera. Ooh, are they ready to say I love you yet? It's like, I'm not sure. I mean, sure, do a little bit more with their relationship or something, so that way we are endeared to these characters. But, and it worked a little bit in Revenge of the Fallen. I talked about that 2 years ago. But it all falls apart when that character disappears in the next movie, and they just dismiss her a couple times by saying, she dumped me, I moved on, I found something better. It's like, well, okay, so that just completely invalidates that entire subplot in the previous movie. So that is one of the problems I have going into Dark of the Moon is the Carly Spencer character. Again, if you had to replace Michaela, I am glad that they replaced her with a girl that's blonde named Carly. It's like, hey, G1 reference, yay! And unlike a lot of people, again, kind of like my thing with Sam, I don't hate Carly, and I don't hate Rosie Huntington-Whiteley's performance in this movie. From my research, she's not really an actress. She's done like 2 or 3 movies. I think she's married to Jason Statham. I think, maybe, question mark. I think I saw that somewhere. But she's more known as a model. So, and that's how she met Michael Bay, is I think he directed a shoot or something that she was involved in. So, but for what she's given in this movie, I feel like for the most part, she does a good job, having not really had any acting credits prior to the movie. Now, I will be the first to admit that I am not really, like an expert when it comes to acting. It's usually, I am satisfied with like the bare minimum, as long as you are above The Room from Tommy Wiseau levels of acting. I am usually pretty okay with anyone's performance in a movie. On the occasion, there will be something where even I have to go, wow, that's bad. But for the most part, I feel like she does a pretty good job. There are a couple moments where I go, okay, yeah, that line read could have been better or something like that. But it's actually ironic. Most of them are involving her like screaming in terror or something like that. Specifically, the Starscream versus Sam scene from the third act of the movie. And I think maybe the reason I think that is because it's probably not acting from that day on set. I think maybe it was from ADR sessions, because the lines and the screams that I'm thinking of for Carly that I go, ooh, yeah, maybe could have done a better take on that, are when she's off screen. Because, Starscream's chasing them around, Carly ducks behind a wall or something, and she's screaming, which it's like, quit screaming, you're behind a wall. Starscream can't see you. If you just stay quiet, you could probably get away. And Sam, has used the grapple glove. He's flying around on Starscream's face and stuff. And she's screaming like, oh no, Sam! It's like those could have been better, and I think those are maybe ADR lines where she was tired after a long session or something. So it's like, oh no, Sam's like, all right, we're good, we got it. She's like, oh, you're gonna take that take? Oh, okay. So so there's a couple of those that aren't great, but for the most part, I think she does fine. And honestly, her writing is fine too, but I think the reason that I'm mostly fine with her writing is that it was meant for Michaela. And they just changed a couple things around to make her a different character, even though she's not that different of a... In some way, it's like, they leave out a couple things, but... there are a couple things where it's like, yeah, this was supposed to be Michaela, because the whole Megan Fox situation happened right when they were about to, I think they were about to start shooting. They're like a couple months away from starting to shoot, and Megan Fox did that interview where she called Bay a Hitler, and Steven Spielberg didn't like that because of his Jewish background, and had her fired. That's at least the version of the story I've heard. There's a couple different reports, it's like on what really happened. So they didn't really have time to go through and rewrite everything. So they instead brought in Carly and didn't really rewrite the part. They just changed around a couple of details. That being that now she's British, and she was attached to the British embassy. And that's one of those things where it's like, it's such a small thing, such a small detail, but it drastically changes the character, and that's one of the things that I think harms Sam's arc in this movie. Is, to a degree, we are sort of kind of replaying the love subplot from Revenge of the Fallen again, because there's a couple of moments in this movie where Sam says, it's like, well, that's why you love me, isn't it? And she says, I don't think we're at the L word yet. Maybe we'll get closer when you're covering your half of the rent, she says cheekily as she leaves for the day. And then at the end of the movie, they say, I love you and stuff like that. And it's like, remove that line about it's like, we're not at the L word yet. And like in your head, Photoshop Megan Fox's face onto Carly's body. I mean, I feel like most of these, and remove the scene of her having been part of the British embassy. I think every line of dialogue out of her mouth for most of it, I think all that stuff could have easily been attributed to Carly, because her job when she left the British embassy, she goes to work running a car collection. That's right up Michaela's alley. Her working on cars with her dad, the bike shop and everything that we saw in Revenge of the Fallen and being mentioned in the first movie. Her leaning over Bumblebee's hood to quote unquote fix his engine when he wasn't broken to begin with. So, a lot of this stuff, it's like, and they couldn't change that. So they had to just add in a couple things to make her a different character, even though she's not really that different of a character. But her being a different character really hurts Sam's arc, because and I kind of had an epiphany. I rewatched it about a week ago because I was gearing up for this video. I'm like, well, it's been a couple years since I've seen this movie. I should probably rewatch it so my thoughts are fresh on this. So there's a scene that's always kind of puzzled me. And it's like, everything on paper here, it seems like this scene should work. Why doesn't this scene work? I'm just not feeling that. I've never felt this scene. And then I kind of had an epiphany this time watching it. It finally hit me why this scene doesn't work. And I'm like, okay, but because the music's good, the words that they're saying are good, but I'm not feeling it. It's like, and I finally understood why I'm never feeling this scene. So the scene I'm talking about is when Sam has recruited Simmons. It's like, oh, I can't wait to get to Dutch. We'll get to Dutch in a few minutes. I love Dutch so much. Alan Tudyk is amazing in everything he does. But he's recruited Simmons and Dutch and Bumblebee, Brains, and Wheelie, and we'll talk about the robots here in a bit. Of course, typical Michael Bay Transformers thing. We're talking about the humans more than the robots. And they're trying to figure out what's going on with the moon in the first half of the movie. And Carly gets home. And she's getting ready she's going to get ready for this party that Dylan Gould is like, oh, is he the bad guy? His name's Gould. It's like, I don't know if he's the bad guy or not. He's hosting this party later that night, and she's coming to get ready. Sam said he's going to attend, and then now all of a sudden she comes back, and he's doing robot conspiracy stuff, and she's not happy about it. So then. And then she and Sam have an argument. They go downstairs, and then she unwittingly gets into Soundwave to drive away. And this was the epiphany I had, where I'm thinking, okay, let's pretend this is Michaela saying some of these things instead. And this scene works, and I think it would have really worked, even though didn't really care about a lot of the human stuff in the movies beforehand. It's serviceable. It's not, Shakespeare. It's never been, the greatest writing ever told. But I think it would have worked really well if it had still been Michaela, so backing up a second, Sam's arc in this movie is him wanting to feel valued again, which is, for a while there, I'm like, well, that's dumb, because it's the complete opposite of what his arc was in the last movie. Aside from the whole love plot thing, where it's like he just wants to be a normal kid. It's like, well, but I suppose the last movie was all about him realizing that he's more special than he thinks, and he shouldn't be just a normal kid because of things that have happened to him, and he is meant for greater things. Then Dark of the Moon rolls around, and he can't even get a job. So he's going, and it's not necessarily, he's entitled, he feels like he's entitled to something. He's just kind of confused. He's like, I've helped save the world twice. Why? And there's scenes there where it's just him and speaking with other people, and I think it really works. It's just then when Carly comes in that things fall apart a little bit. Because like when he's trying to get that job with Bruce at Accurata, and he says, Mister, I saved your life twice. I can't tell you how, I can't tell you when, but I've done stuff that matters, and I just want to feel like I matter again. I think that works really well. That is... And especially where I am right now, it's with this pandemic going on a year and a half now. I haven't I'm just kind of a bum sitting at home, not doing a job outside of YouTube stuff, which I've experimented with monetization and stuff. It hasn't really turned out that well. I might experiment with monetizing this video. I don't know. We'll see if trailer footage or something gets copyright claimed. We'll find out. But it's relatable. I think that story of Sam wanting to matter again is relatable, especially where I am in my life now. It's like this movie came out 10 years ago. I was just finishing up the 7th grade, I want to say. Yeah, I had just finished up the 7th grade and I was about to go into the 8th. So, fast forward 10 years, I find the, just want to matter again, just want a job, that's relatable. And so that stuff kind of works. And so then when Sam and Carly have that argument and they walk out of the apartment and he says to her, I just want to matter to someone again. And she says to him, you matter to me. If that had been Michaela after 2 movies of running from robots together, that would have worked so well. It's like, that's like, I mean, it's maybe, again, not Shakespeare or, the greatest writing ever, but it in terms of storytelling, it works fine. It works fine. So I really kind of, that scene played out this time a week ago when I watched it, and I kind of finally sat back and I'm like, that's why this scene doesn't work, because it's not Michaela and it's some new person that we've only known for an hour at this point. So, but the conversation they're having is a conversation that was written for people that had been together for like 4 years at this point. So, I also feel like one of the things that probably would have changed is also it's like, Sam wants to matter. He needs to, and because that's the thing at the end of the movie where because his arc kind of comes to an end, and and he's done with these 3 movies, is that Sam has realized. It's like Sam McKay, he matters to this girl. Ignoring that the cast changed for a moment, and again, I think this is a good place for his arc to end. It's just cast change, where it's like he realizes that he is content with what he has with this girl that he loves, and then maybe there would have been a couple scenes in the Megan Fox version if she had stuck around where it's like, I'm waiting, it's like, because the parents come by and the parents never share any scenes with Carly in the movie. Judy mentions Carly once, but that's about it. They never really mention much. And then they have that scene later where Sam's on the bus and they're talking about, you need to get her back. And of course, that scene had to be completely altered and stuff because of the lack of Michaela in this movie. But I feel like if Michaela had stuck around, we would have gotten like 1 or 2 scenes with the 4 of them together again. And it's like maybe a scene with with the parent while Sam's off in a job interview or something. Michaela talks like, I'm so worried about him. It's like you feel like he doesn't matter anymore, but he does. It's like I thought we were at the stage where we were going to get married or something, and then at the end of the movie, then Bumblebee starts dropping the rings. That makes a little bit more sense, and then Sam has that line at the end of the actual movie where it says, "B, you need to slow way down," where instead that maybe would have been the actual. It's like, oh hey, maybe we should get married now moment. Instead, it's played off as a joke. So I mean, again, I don't hate Carly in this movie. I don't hate Rosie Huntington-Whiteley's performance. It just really, unfortunately, because of circumstance, and again, kind of like Revenge of the Fallen, talking about, going back to 2 years ago when I talked about that, there's a couple things in this movie where just because of circumstances, I can't blame the movie for turning out the way it turned out. And again, it's better. I will also say this movie is way better than Revenge of the Fallen. This is one of my problems with the movie. I'm going to talk about a couple of my other problems with this movie, but overall, this is a much better movie than Revenge of the Fallen. Let me be clear about that. So yeah, but Sam's arc really does feel kind of wonky in this movie because of the lack of Michaela and the girlfriend just being completely replaced. Even if, again, I really I understand the whole situation of not wanting Megan Fox back after that like PR fiasco or whatever, but it's like you just recast her with another actress that's just looks similar or something. I mean, movies and shows do that all the time. Why do you have to like completely change the character? Because I guess maybe that was like a Hasbro thing. Maybe it's like, well, we want, or Aaron Kruger thinking it's like, well, now we have an opportunity for this to be Carly instead of Michaela, so that way we get, our G1 brownie points or something. Because that is one of the really cool things I do like about the main plot of this movie, is that it is like a combination of 2 episodes of G1, and done in the Michael Bay style, which makes for a really fun watch. But Sam's arc just unfortunately just really kind of falls apart. For me in this movie, even though there's a lot of good ideas behind it of him just wanting to matter. And it's because, again, that moment where Carly says, "You matter to me," and then the kind of sad music plays, and I'd always found this line funny, but now I kind of feel like that this is just another one of the reasons where it's like, well, no, that can actually kind of ruin the scene, where Simmons says, the warrior's life is a lonely one, my friend. How the heck did she afford that car? Her boss? Rich jerks. I used to hate him, but now, because now he's one of the rich people he used to hate. I always found that line funny, and it is still a funny line, but, in the, original version, maybe they added that because they went, well, this scene doesn't work anymore because we didn't have time to rewrite some of these things, and so we need something to distract from the fact that the scene doesn't work. But if that was in the original version of the scene, it's like, oh, that would have totally ruined it, because it's like it would have been probably would have worked pretty well for those 2 characters, and instead Simmons comes in and ruins it with a joke at the end. But so Sam not great in this movie. He's not awful. I don't hate him, but his whole arc kind of falls apart, and that's unfortunate because looking at it, I can really see what they were going for, and it would have probably worked with Michaela, which is unfortunate. So. Yeah, moving on from Sam. I probably spent way longer talking about Sam than I should have, especially considering that he's not in the final 2 movies in this franchise. But no, I'm not going to say that because it's arguable that this franchise wouldn't have gotten off the ground without Shia LaBeouf, because again, a lot of people agree that the first movie's the best, and there is a certain charm. I still really like him in that movie. There are some things that it became worse in the outbursts and stuff, but again, plot, as I explained, it makes sense to me anyway. So I suppose for this being Sam's final outing in the franchise, I suppose now it probably was fair to talk about him for a bit. So moving on to kind of the main plot of this movie, as I alluded to a minute ago, I actually really like the plot of this movie. I do have, again, like a lot of things in Michael Bay Transformers movies, I have my issues. But for the most part, I really like the plot of this movie. So the plot of this movie is that sometime, a long, long time ago, there was a Autobot spaceship that left Cybertron and was shot down as it was trying to leave. On board this spaceship was Sentinel Prime, the original leader of the Autobots before Optimus, who had the means to open up a space bridge. And after tumbling through space for presumably millions of years, it crash lands on the moon in the early 1960s. Well, everyone watching the skies at that time on Earth realizes this happens. So the United States notices it, the Russians notice it, and they realize we need to get up there and figure out what's going on. So thus commences the space race, and the reason we go to the moon. For me, as a history buff, this is just really cool. The idea that there's already enough big conspiracy things around the moon. There's people that say we never even went to the moon and it was all staged, and that I think Stanley Kubrick directed the moon landing, which is, to me, it's like ludicrous. It's like, okay, so you're gonna go through this trouble to stage a massive conspiracy and fake the moon landing, and you get Stanley Kubrick to do it. Arguably one of the greatest directors of all time. So it's like, if Stanley Kubrick had staged the moon landing, I feel like he would have said something about it. I don't care about what, sworn to secrecy documents he would have had to sign. It's like, are you kidding me? That's one of those conspiracy theory things where I just laugh at it and go, how can anyone believe this? But there is enough conspiracy stuff surrounding the space race and going to the moon in popular culture that working it into Transformers lore works. I like that. And this does get into one of the complaints about the Transformers live action franchise in general, and and that is kind of the formula. And this, I think it really works for this movie though, and there's a couple of reasons for that. Even though, so 2 years ago when I was talking about, well, I mean, I suppose I don't need to tie it in this video because it can be said about any movie in the franchise. But there is this common theme online where people say that every Transformers movie is exactly the same. Right before The Last Night came out, the Nostalgia Critic put out a video of his, I think he called it his preview instead of his review of The Last Night, because the movie was not out yet. And he says, well, I can guarantee you the things that are going to happen in this movie because every single one of these movies is exactly the same. I watched it and I'm like, nah. There's a couple of these things that are probably safe bets, but there's no way he's this accurate. And then the movie came out, I'm like, no, he was dead on. It's like there was like one or two small little details he got wrong, but for the most part, the big things, it's like, this is exactly right. But I think that's more of a problem with The Last Night in general, which I'm not looking forward to 2027 when I have to talk about that. That's not gonna be a fun time. And I don't know. I may not wait until 2027. I may do before then. But gosh, The Last Night is such a travesty of a movie. Everything wrong with the Michael Bay Transformers movies is found in that movie. So, but yeah, one of the problems with The Last Night is that it just sticks to that exact same formula that all these movies do. But with the prior four movies that came before The Last Night, I felt, it's like I recognize that there is a formula, but it was done differently enough in each movie that I was okay with it. For instance, movie one, for the most part, it is a human story with robots in the background, which people complain about. But for a first movie, I've said this before, I'll say it again, it makes sense. You can't to the quote unquote modern audience, the audience of July 2007 when the movie came out, you had to introduce these audiences to the Transformers characters. But before you did that, you had to make this is where I think what they were going for, and I think it worked, and I recognize this, and I agree with what they did here. That you have to first make a believable world for them to exist in. A lot of people, when Bumblebee came out, a lot of people were going, it starts on Cybertron. It's like, oh, why didn't this is what the 2007 movie should have been. It's like, well, but the only reason we can do Bumblebee in 2018 is because 2007 laid the groundwork. If you had started 2007 with like the battle on Cybertron or something, I think people would have been confused. There would have been, it's like, oh, I don't understand what's going on here. Why are these two sides fighting? It's like, and it would have been explained later in the rest of the movie, I guess. But opening with, you have the narration of Optimus Prime at the beginning, and then for the most part, it's humans versus the Transformers for a while, with Blackout's attack on Soxent, and then we get introduced to our main character with Sam, who doesn't show up until like 15 minutes into the movie, which is actually kind of bold if you ask me. The military guys are there, Lennox and Epps, but they're not the mains; they're side characters, or tertiary protagonists or something like that. So easing the audience into the world of the Transformers works for that first movie, especially in the summer of 2007. And so then at the second part of the movie, you get this info dump with information about everything that's going on. In two scenes, actually. You get a little backstory on Cybertron from Optimus. He explains the war. And this is one of those things where I think that you couldn't do Bumblebee first, you needed to, and the first movie playing out the way it did, I think was needed. Because it's show don't tell, which is a big thing in movies. We understand who, by starting it on Earth and showing the Decepticons wrecking shop, and then the Autobots come to protect a couple humans. Bumblebee shows up to protect Sam and Michaela. We understand through show don't tell. Here are the good robots. Here are the bad robots. We get that understanding, and then you get the explanation. Optimus gives some of the backstory on Cybertron, and then some pieces of information are thrown out about here's what the Allspark is. Megatron's frozen in ice. Then you go to Sector 7, and it's like, okay, the humans have actually known about this for a long while, and you get some lore dump there. That stuff I think was done correctly, and if we had started Transformers '07 the way Bumblebee had started with the fight on Cybertron, for people that didn't understand Transformers, I think just seeing a bunch of robots shooting it out on a planet, they would have gone, and then one side going, okay, we need to escape the planet, something like that, or we're launching the Allspark into space. Has the potential to, like I said, be confusing. It's like, what are these two sides? Why are they fighting each other? That's a lot of information to get across in just a couple minutes of an opening prologue, and which is Bumblebee does not necessarily get some of this information across because it's assuming you already know what Transformers is, because there were 5 previous movies that were global, 4 of the 5 were global phenomenons, breaking box office records, that pretty much anyone going to see Bumblebee at that point knows what Transformers is, knows the stakes, knows the sides. July 2007, it's not necessarily the same. People are going there because, I've seen Pirates of the Caribbean at World's End. It's the summer. It's hot outside. I don't want to be outside. Spider-Man 3 was kind of a bust. What else is there? Here's this movie about shape-changing aliens fighting war. Okay, have no clue what this is. Let's go in and find out. So, doing kind of the Transformers have had some sort of impact on the shaping of Earth's culture and stuff like that. For the first movie, easing the audience in works pretty well. Fast forward 2 years to Revenge of the Fallen. It's, again, you get a similar story but I think it's a lot of it. I talked about some of this last time, so I'll be brief. 2 years, I talked about this 2 years ago. In a lot of ways, it is, again, it's similar, where it's, aliens were instrumental in the shaping of Earth's culture, and blah, blah, blah. But adding that on to 2007's story, it feels natural. It's like, oh, hey, here's actually, Transformers have been here for a lot longer than we thought. And it really works. But then we get to Dark of the Moon, and this is where I feel like it starts to break down, even though I started this whole tirade saying that I like the story of this movie. But it's the details. The devil is in the details. It's some of the details where I think this starts to break down, and it does start feeling formulaic. Even though there are some ways where it's like, okay, yeah, again, it's the formula, but there's things that make this feel different. But then there's also, again, devil in the details. It's a couple details that make you go, wait, hold on a second. So, finally getting back to Dark of the Moon after my tirade about all that, I apologize. This is what happens when I just ramble, and I just talk for an hour about these things. Is, again, history nut. I like tying it into conspiracy about the moon landings and stuff. That's kind of cool. Sentinel Prime, interesting addition. Bringing up lore. Also, just sort of kind of solidifying that Sentinel Prime is never going to be a nice character in Transformers fiction, because just immediately prior, not immediately prior, because actually it had been a couple years, but prior to Dark of the Moon, Transformers animated, Sentinel Prime in that show, huge jerk. Sentinel Prime in Dark of the Moon, huge jerk. I'm starting to see a pattern. Maybe Sentinel Prime is just a huge jerk. And since then, there's been more done with the character, but prior to then, animated and Dark of the Moon were really kind of the only things that had done much with Sentinel Prime. Sentinel Prime had sort of been a character back in like the Marvel or Dreamwave comics, I think, but only as like a brief mention of being the direct predecessor to Optimus, and that's about it. So, and then since then, I think, especially in the new IDW reboot comics, I think they've really gone into Sentinel Prime is a big corrupted jerk and stuff like that. So that stuff is cool, but then we start to get into some of these details, and this is one of those things where it's like, well, you rewrite some of the dialogue in these scenes, and this works a lot better. Even though I enjoy the whole picture, there are a couple moments where I'm like, wait, hold on a second. And this is one of those moments where it's like, gee, I really wish we could focus more on the robots themselves as characters and have a few more dialogue scenes between robots and robots instead of always needing to shove a human in here. And again, that goes back to what I was saying earlier about you have to have a little bit of everything for everyone. And Michael Bay prioritizing action and spectacle over story. But the Megatron Sentinel plot in this movie is cool, but it doesn't make a lot of sense. For instance, DC, Sentinel betrays the Autobots, drives off with the pillars, it becomes night all of a sudden. I think that's a joke CinemaSins made. It's like, okay, it's right in this, it's like the sun was going down. It's like you could when Sentinel left Nest headquarters, you could see the sun was going down. So there's only 30 minutes in between these two in between these two scenes. It's not like, nothing happened for half a day. But the Decepticons show up in DC, and then we do have, I like it, it's cool, the homage to G1 with Megatron sitting in Abe Lincoln's chair at the Lincoln Memorial. Sentinel starts to throw the pillars out. He does that whole hand wavy thing. You can control them with telekinesis or something, I guess, magnets or something like that. And then Starscream says, "Oh, so this has always been your plan, my master?" And then Megatron says, it's like, yeah, we were meant to rendezvous here on Earth before fate waylaid us both. But in order to revive Sentinel, we needed Prime and his Matrix. Okay. I have issues with this. First of all, and there is some retconning here, and there are a couple things that can be done. It's like, again, retcons, but good retcons, and it's like, oh, okay, the whole big plot is starting to make a little bit more sense. For instance, one of the immediate retcons is that Sentinel and Megatron had agreed to meet on Earth at the exact same time. That's obviously not true based on what we saw in movie 1, where Megatron crash landed in the ice some time ago and was frozen. So of course the Decepticon plot in that movie was the Decepticons want the Allspark to turn Earth's machines into an instant army. That's one of those things where the Decepticons never had a moment where they monologued about their plan. That was Autobots that said this is what the Decepticons' plan is. So that may, for all we know, that may not have been their plan in the first movie, and that was just the Autobots' best guess. Which I think if they had said that in Dark of the Moon, where there's a scene where Megatron, Optimus, and because in this DC scene, Sentinel and Sentinel and Optimus have their little tussle. I think it would have been interesting if Megatron had come over and was all like, "Ha ha ha! We outsmarted you, Prime. You're so dumb. You just you've fallen into our trap." Something like that. Where it's like, we've stopped you before. It's like, oh, did you? It's like, yes, you were going to use the Allspark to turn Earth's machines into an army. Oh, is that what you thought our plan was? That's not what we wanted. That was never our plan. It's like, oh, well, now I feel dumb. It's like that would have been interesting. So I think that would have been interesting kind of retcon. And it's like, well, there's basis for that because the Decepticons never said this is what our plan is. So mostly because the Decepticons weren't really characters in the first movie. Again, I went over that back in 2017. It's like it worked for the Decepticons more to be boogeymen than monsters in the first movie, but they needed more characterization in the following movies that they didn't necessarily get. So then, second movie, The Fallen comes in, and The Fallen is really one of these things where it's like, okay, so what's his deal? It's and where does he fit into all this? Because movie 3 just kind of forgets that The Fallen exists entirely. If you were just working on movie 1's logic, then I think this whole Sentinel Prime Megatron Alliance thing works pretty well. But the problem is, movie 2 is the thing that happened. And it's one of those things, and it's like, if a complete, because this is one of the things that happened with The Last Knight, where a completely different team of writers came in and discarded what the previous writers had done. Oh, wait, maybe this isn't the only franchise where this happens. Star Wars sequel trilogy, perhaps? But, oh, boy, I shouldn't have made that joke. I'm sorry. But a whole other team of writers came in and sort of kind of looked at what Aaron Kruger had did with Age of Extinction and went, okay, we're going to do that, but nah. And so then, again, devil is in the bloody details. where they looked at the stuff that the Age of Extinction did and then went to continue that. But then when you look at the details, it's like, okay, that doesn't make any sense, because it's like, yes, here are the knights we were talking about in Age of Extinction. It's like, well, hold on, no, because Optimus was a member of those knights, yet he has no idea these knights exist. So can you give me some backstory to explain? No? Okay. It's like, hello, Optimus. I am your creator. I am Quintessa. It's like, you're my creator? It's like, yes. It's like, wait, so this is who hired Lockdown? If she's the one who hired Lockdown, then why did he keep talking about creators, plural? What's with the alien hand at the very beginning? It's like, years ago, right when The Last Night was about to come out, or had just come out, I wrote this whole great big expanded backstory, jumping through all these hoops, trying to make things make sense. Where it's like, okay, so these are the Quintessons, as in the Quintess sons, as in they are the creations of Quintessa, and she sent them out there to then harvest the raw materials to build the Transformers show. And so then that, I guess that makes sense. And then since she's a trickster, she fooled Lockdown into making him think that there were more, or she just used the Quintessons as her third party to hire Lockdown, so he didn't have to interact with her. I did a whole bunch of jumping through hoops like that, but finally, after doing a whole bunch of them, I'm like, what does it matter? It doesn't matter. We're not getting this sixth movie, and there's no fixing it at this point, so it doesn't matter. So I think I put that on message boards. I don't even think I have a Word document with that on it. I have to scroll through 3 years worth of message board stuff to find that again. I don't want to do that. So similarly, we have something similar here with Dark of the Moon, where okay, so it was Megatron and Sentinel's plan to betray the Autobots, send the Allspark to Earth, I guess, and then meet up there, and then transport Cybertron to Earth. So then how does the Fallen fit into this? I mean, and there's some things where, again, I can see you retcon some things where it's like Megatron could go, I was only using the Fallen. He was a pompous fool who thought I served him, but in reality he served us, or something like that. But because he's like, okay, maybe you wanted to use the Allspark, and then the energy you would gather from Earth's sun to then have enough raw energy combined with the power of the Allspark to then rebuild Cybertron. But then again, fate waylaid you both, so then you had to change your plans a little bit. And then it's like, and then I guess Megatron could catch Sentinel up with what the new plan is, or something, that modify it, something like that. And so since they don't have the Allspark anymore, since they don't have the energy that they thought they were going to collect from Earth's sun anymore, now instead they are going to use Earth's population as a slave force. Okay, if they had done all that, I guess it would have been fine, but there's still a problem, and that is the fact that, and again, because I could do the whole thing of, I was using the Fallen, blah, blah, he wasn't really my master, blah, 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 but then at the end of Revenge of the Fallen, Prime goes, give me your face, rips off the Fallen's face, crushes his spark, and then Megatron has that moment where he leans against the wall going, no, it's like he's actually upset that his master is dead. That kind of ruins the whole thing. And I guess if they had just, I guess they could have somehow they could have jumped through hoops to explain it, but it's so on paper, I really like the idea of it's like, Sentinel and Megatron teamed up long ago and to bring Earth there, but it's one of those things where but in practice it doesn't work that well. Even though so in order to watch this movie, you do kind of have to turn off your brain, forget the past two movies existed. Which also sort of kind of helps with Sam's arc, now that I think about it. Maybe I should just do that as well, because I already turn off my brain when it comes to the plot, to that part of the plot of the movie and the Decepticons' grand plan. Maybe I should also do that with Sam's arc. But then there's more problems. CinemaSins pointed this out as well back in the day, and I went, oh, that's a really good point, is that there's been this legion of Decepticons sitting on the moon since the 60s. Why the heck have they not... It's like, I guess that's the explanation for where some of the Decepticons came from in Revenge of the Fallen to fight in Egypt, is that they were like advanced scouts that were, that a signal was sent and they woke up on the moon and jumped and came down pretty pretty fast. And I guess where some of the others maybe came, like Demolisher and Sideways and the Constructicons and stuff like that. But it's like, if I were the Decepticons and Megatron is reborn, we know where the Star Harvester is. Send all of them. Especially at that point, where if I'm Megatron, and it's like at that point, especially if I'm Megatron, I am Megatron, leader of the Decepticons. We lie and steal and cheat and murder and all this other stuff because we are bad guys. At that point, I'd be saying, screw Sentinel Prime. I'm going to well, I suppose if he wants to bring Cybertron to Earth, he still needs Sentinel Prime in the pillars and stuff. But I mean, wouldn't he know? I guess Megatron maybe would know about Sentinel's resting place. And again, just go up there, don't wake up Sentinel, grab maybe he didn't know how to work the pillars or something. And that actually would have been a cool scene. It's like where Sentinel says to Megatron, I'm surprised that you actually bothered to have me awoken. And it's like, well, I would have done it myself, but I'm a big dum-dum and I don't know how to control the pillars. They're your machine. You know how to control them. That would have been a fine explanation. But again, I suppose that would have made sense. But still, why not wake up the entire army that's hiding on the moon and bring them down to Egypt? Then the military and the Autobots get there and they go, oh, well, we're screwed. And the Decepticons probably win in that movie. Not even reviving Optimus Prime is not going to be something that fixes everything like it magically does in Revenge of the Fallen. As is, it's like in with the warships flying overhead and all the little other ships flying around. It's like no, the Autobots are screwed. But of course, the real reason the Decepticons didn't do that is because Dark of the Moon had not been written yet. So the writers, Aaron Kruger did not know that there was an army of Decepticons waiting on the moon. So that's one of those things where as time goes on, these movies and their continuity slowly fall apart. With each new movie that comes out, the continuity falls apart even more. And that's honestly one of the reasons why I like Age of Extinction as much as I do, and why I think it's better than most people give it credit for, is because for the most part, there are a couple things, but for the most part, the continuity holds up pretty well between each movie, and then The Last Night just comes in and nukes any idea of a continuity and timelines and stuff like that. So, I'm not going to have fun talking about The Last Night when I eventually get to that. I sort of have a problem with some of the finer details of the plot. But when I turn my brain off and just watch, and it's like, all right, let's uncover this conspiracy on the moon, and then do some other stuff. And it's like with some fun side characters. Yeah, it's like let's finally talk about Dutch. Alan Tudyk, best character in the entire movie. I am not joking. He's my favorite character, arguably in the entire franchise. It's like, why, for Pete's sake, why was Dutch not the main character this entire time? Dutch is so much fun. This is also the movie that a lot of people point to like Firefly or something and going, that being the first time they saw Alan Tudyk. This is the movie for me. This is the thing that introduced me to Alan Tudyk. Alan Tudyk in my eyes can do no wrong. He is such a great actor, and he's so good at playing funny too. But he's not necessarily a comedic actor. And honestly, in some ways, I feel like Dutch is actually sort of kind of the straight man of the group, because he's like this ex German special forces guy or something, and he plays most everything straight, but then some of the words out of his mouth are just hysterical, and the fact that he's playing it straight is so good. For instance, his introduction is gold. Simmons is having that interview with Bill O'Reilly on Fox, which is hysterical. He's like, that didn't age well. But because I'm pretty sure he's no longer on the network anymore, I don't think. It's been a couple years ago, and I don't really pay attention to that stuff. But it's one of those things that's like, oh, that didn't age well. Iron Man 2, same thing. I think Bill O'Reilly had a thing in Iron Man 2. It's not there anymore. But so his introduction, Bill O'Reilly and Simmons get into a shouting match, and he's like, all right, this interview's over, and he calls out for Dutch, and he goes, Dutch, and so Dutch comes out of wherever he was hiding and opens up with, you have obviously upset Mr. Simmons. Your 23 seconds to leave the property. I have quarters of police. You're peasant people throwing rocks at a giant. It's just, I love it. I love it. I love it so much. Just the way he says that. It's like it's like I don't think Dutch cares that much about Simmons at all, but he's his employer, so he's forced to care. So this building up Simmons's ego of the camera crew are peasant people throwing rocks at a giant is just hysterical to me. And then this movie has some pretty good humor. I feel like some of the other movies try to be funny. Revenge of the Fallen tries a lot to be funny, but a lot of it does come off as kind of crude or crass or something like that. I think Dark of the Moon definitely has some moments like that, but it does have some legitimately good, I think, smart humor moments that's like Dutch is just kind of a borderline silly straight man type thing. But one it always makes me chuckle is they go to the Russian bar and Simmons, not speaking any Russian, taps on the door. The little sliding thing comes over, and he goes, "Dos svidaniya," and the Russian bouncer on the other side just goes, "That means goodbye." Boom! Slams the thing shut. Like, well, fair enough. Knocks on it again, holds up a wad of like $200 bills. He goes, "Okay, yes," and then says hello in Russian, and then opens up the door. Walks up to the cosmonauts. Just this whole scene just has me rolling every time. Dutch, give me something tough. Dutch is going through his little English. It's like maybe even English to German to Russian translator. And the Russian cosmonaut goes, "We do speak English." Simmons turns to Dutch and says, "Dutch, you suck." It's like, it is the Cyrillic alphabet. It's like all the buttons you never push on a calculator. I don't suck. And he sadly goes to sit at the bar and to thumb through it while Simmons and Sam talk business with the cosmonauts, and he's just, it's like, then these two Russian women are screaming at each other, and he's not paying attention to any of it. He's trying to figure out a strong opening, something to make him sound tough. And he's like, and he reads out the translation out loud, and he goes, "Watch out, baby, my child's smoking here." It's like, no, hold on, that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And he was like, starts thumbing through it again. Then the guns come out, and then he gets this look in his eye. It's like, oh, he's seen some stuff, ladies and gentlemen. Dutch has seen some stuff, and now he's about to throw down. He in a quick move grabs the shotgun from the lady, throws her over the bar, slams her down on it, and takes the shotgun, points at this poor, I think this guy is just like a waiter or something. He has no part in any of this. It's just this is just a job for him. But now he's frightened to death because he's got a double-barrel shotgun pointed in his face. Slowly sink down to the floor. The Dutch pulls a handgun out of his jacket and is pointing it around. They've got a whole Mexican standoff going off in this bar. Sam is being held at gunpoint down on a table. He's like, "Simmons, control your boy. It's like, "Stop," says stop in German, and then finally drops the handgun. It's like, "I'm so sorry, that was the old me." It's like, I love it. I don't know why I love it. It's just good. Also, Jerry Wang is an interesting character. For insight, there's a lot of I want to call it dark humor in this movie, or maybe I guess some people would call it crass humor, that for whatever reason just speaks to me. Some of the crass humor did not speak to me in Revenge of the Fallen, but in Dark of the Moon a lot of it does speak to me, and I just find it really funny. Laserbeak goes to suicide Jerry Wang, and he's freaking out, rightly so, because there's an evil alien condor right in front of him. It's like, "What did you say to Witwicky?" And he goes, pulls out double magnums and points them at Laserbeak. He's shaking the entire time, but he's trying to act tough, and they're pointed right at the camera. It was such a surprise the first time it happened. I can remember sitting there in the theater, it's like, "Whoa, he just pulled out magnums, what the heck?" It's like, not magnums, excuse me, but he's like, but he's pointing them at the. I don't think they're magnums, but because those are 6-shooters. But he's still packing heat. I think they're 9mm. But he's pointing them at Laserbeak and goes, "Who's the chicken dinner now? You messed with the wrong Wang today." It's like, I find that funny. Then he gets shoved out the window. See, there's some, and this is one of those things where it's like, were you trying to go for comedic here? Were you trying to go for comedic here, Bay, or were you trying to play this straight and just accidentally came off as comedic in your kind of crass way that you shoot things sometimes? Because a man has been pushed out a window to go splat on the sidewalk under, several, 10 plus stories below, because they're in DC. They're in this big office building. Even though I don't know if DC has a building that is actually that tall. I think that's maybe one of those things they probably shot in Chicago and called it DC. Now that I think about it, but they didn't need to do this. It's like, because it would have worked fine. But it cuts to that. But as he's falling, it cuts to that conference room meeting with Bruce Brazos and the guy that reminds me of Kevin Butler from the old PlayStation commercials, but isn't Kevin Butler. Middle regular business meeting, and then Jerry goes sailing down. And it's the little noise, and it's the little scream he makes as he falls. And it's like, and the fact that Michael Bay bothered to show him falling at all, and it wasn't you see the body plummet. It's like it could have been him from the side, and you see it, and then it's not no one notices it, but then you hear the thump, and they all go, "Oh, what was that?" And then they realize that a person has fallen to their death. But it's a straight up. You see his whole profile, his face, and the little scream he makes. It's a very girlish squeal that he makes as he falls, and then John Malkovich's reaction is he kind of does a little jump thing and looks at, and then he immediately goes into boss mode as paper, and it's also the papers flying. I think also makes it funny because there were not any papers in that office that I could tell when Laserbeak pushing out the window, but then suddenly there's papers flying through the air. It's like, I just kind of find that amusing. And I don't know why a guy getting pushed to his death is so funny to me, but I chuckle at this scene every single time. I think it just has to do with some of the dialogue here. and he immediately goes into boss mode. It's like, all right, get me legal. Starting to do the whole thing. It's like, yes, a coworker died, and staring at him is not going to bring him back. The man was depressed. Cuts back to the conference room, and then that guy with the glasses that does not like Jerry, he's just staring at him and goes, "That's Jerry." It's like, I don't know what it is about this guy's reaction. And then as Bruce continues to try to do legal stuff, there's one guy taking a picture of the dead guy on the sidewalk outside, and another employee walks up and says, "Don't take a picture," and takes the camera away from him. It's like, I don't know why I find this funny. I just do. And then he goes up to Sam to run more damage control stuff. And he didn't need to describe what has happened to Jerry, but he does. And it's like, Jerry is everywhere. He is in the bamboo. He is in the balustrades. It's like in the alliteration, the fact that he's going so into detail. I just find it funny. I don't know why I find it funny. There's a couple good jokes like that in this movie that for whatever reason I just find funny. Dutch is up there. Wheelie and Brains are also amusing. I'm going to call them amusing. I like Wheelie in this movie better than I did in Revenge of the Fallen, mostly because there's one of those that's like, okay, Michael Bay is going to be a crass Michael Bay like he always is. I talked about a couple of those things 2 years ago that I didn't really care for Wheelie in that movie, but I like him better here. He's a little bit more of a smart aleck in this movie, which I kind of find funny. Brains is also, it's like, this is one of those things that I don't care for. Like, Brains' introduction is him looking up Carly's dress. That's just, Bay, no, I defend you on a lot of things, but this is I defend, like, in terms of his direction of actors and his understanding of storytelling sometimes, and direction of action sequences. I defend him on a lot of that stuff because I don't think he's as bad. It's personal taste, stuff like that. But, that's one of those areas I just can't defend Bay in. It's like, no, Romeo and Juliet law scene. What is this? Bay, no. Why is Brains looking up Carly's dress and that's his introduction to the movie? I know this is just an audio thing, but I just put my hands over my face and kind of groaned, so that's why that probably sounded weird. But Yeah, so but aside from that, I do find Brains and Wheelie amusing in this movie, especially the fact that the Autobots just like constantly ignored them. They are included on the list of Autobots to be jettisoned from Earth. You know, one of the two episodes of G1 that was mushed together to make this movie that I like. But the Autobots just like never ever acknowledge them. Bumblebee sort of kind of acknowledges them, but none of the other Autobots ever acknowledge them. They're riding on top of the wreckers as they're driving through Chicago, shooting stuff up, and then they fall off. And none of the three wreckers. Well, granted, they don't leave the base much because they're jerks. No, that's putting it nicely. And it's like so I guess that makes sense for the wreckers. But Ratchet or Bumblebee, no one ever pays attention to Wheelie and Brains. It's like, all right, come on, boys, let's go. Keep up. Where the wreckers just drive off and they're like, no, don't leave. Shockwave's coming, and they have to get out of there. And then they get lost, and then they actually end up saving Bumblebee's life, and then so I found it extremely funny. Then in the next movie, in Age of Extinction, when Brain shows back up, and then the Autobots are ransacking KSI, he's like, guys, it's me, Brains, get me out of this Frankenstein box. It's like, do they even know who you are? So so yeah, they're amusing. There is a good line out of Wheelie where it's like, I'm glad they sent us Big Yellow and his cannons because that dog can't protect crap. It's like, that's just funny. I don't know if I really have too much more to say about this movie. I've kind of gone on my ups and downs, things I like about it. I mean, like I said, the second half of the movie is just like straightforward action. It's awesome. This last go around when I watched it a week ago, I've had the Blu-ray since it came out, but recently we've upgraded our sound system at the house. So we splurged a little bit, and we've been doing this with a lot of movies recently. We probably, ordered $50 worth of movies at this point. But all the Ultra HD stuff that's available on Amazon Prime Video, we've been getting a bunch of movies that way because it's $3.99, with the better sound and stuff. Why not? It's like, well, after a while, that $3.99 you watch 15 movies at $3.99. It's like, ooh, this is starting to get a little expensive, but the sound is worth it, I assure you, and it's still cheaper than going to a theater. But gosh, the sound design in these movies, watching it in Ultra HD with the better surround sound, our speaker system that we've got right now, I mean, the floor is shaking with like when the driller is going through the buildings and stuff like that, and the ships are going burning out. It's like, oh, I love the sound design in these movies so much. I think I said this 2 years ago, but I would totally buy a album off of iTunes that is just filled. This is the closest to liking ASMR I'm ever going to get. That is just the sound effects from the movies. It's like, all right, here's 2 minutes of transformations. Stuff like that. It's like, all right, here's cannon noises. All right, here's the ships flying by. And stuff like that. I would happily pay $10 for an album of just the sound effects because I love them. So Starscream's little walking noises, the womp, 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 they're so good. The sound design in these movies are so good. I mean, even the last night where it's like, oh, this movie's awful, but the sound design and the music, and the CG. So it's like on a technical level, I think these movies are always well done. It's just some of the other stuff that's a problem with them like that. So I suppose it's worth mentioning, but not really going into detail about. But man, what a waste Shockwave is in this movie. Arguably, if I had to put, if I had to make a choice, what is the best design out of the entire Bayverse in terms of robot designs? It would either have to be Optimus Prime from movies 1 through 3 or Shockwave. I'm leaning a little bit more towards Shockwave because that is just a cool design. That is just such a cool design. I mean, sure, the gun hand is wrong. They accidentally flip-flop the gun hand. It's his right hand instead of his left hand, like it was in G1. But the kind of he's got like that big kind of rib cage thing and the big clunky feet and the big cable that goes to the gun, and he reaches his hand over and cocks it back as he's in Chicago and walking down the street, and he's got the one evil red eye and the thing, because Shockwave has always had the little things on the side of his head. Now they kind of look like devil horns. It's like, oh my gosh, this design is amazing. And he's on screen for about 3 minutes and he has one line. Thank goodness for Nitro Zeus. Even though the design's a little different, and he actually transforms into something, but it reused the same head model, just recolored. So it's like, thank goodness for Nitro Zeus for actually getting a little bit more use out of that design, somewhat. And after rambling on for I don't know how long at this point, honestly, I think I'm kind of done talking about the movie. But I'm not done talking yet because, of course, these movies come out for one reason and one reason only, and that is to make money. But it's not just money for Paramount at the box office. It also means money for Hasbro in the toy department. And of course, I bought lots of toys from this movie. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of the toys that I have from this film. We will start with the Autobots. So let's see here. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 Autobots. I have 8 Autobots in this movie. I have 8 Autobots from this movie. 2 of them being duplicates here. So we'll go from left to right here. So I have 2 Ironhides. There were 2 different versions, well, technically 3 if you want to count the kind of big weaponizer Ironhide thing that was released as a leader class. But there were 2 different versions of Voyager Ironhide released. A much, much better version of Ironhide compared to the last 2 releases he had received from the movies, because they were the exact same mold, just with different paint on the Revenge of the Fallen version. So this is a much better version of Ironhide, maybe a little too tall and a little too lean, because Ironhide was always a little shorter and stocky. But in terms of transformation, overall look, much better. Much better. I liked it so much. I got it twice, because actually I got the, what is it called? Cannon Force Ironhide, I think, which is the one that's in truck mode there. I got the Cannon Force Ironhide figure first, and then I'm like, oh, this is actually a really good figure. So then I got the other version of Ironhide as well, and then that way, it came with the 2 weapons. So then I was able to give the regular version of Ironhide as 2 underarm weapons. So the Cannon Force Ironhide is really cool because it's the exact same mold, but then now his bumpers have a little bit of shiny silver paint on them, and then he has his G1 color scheme, which is always fun. So that's nice. So pretty good figures. I really like them. I just went ahead and kept Cannon Force Ironhide in his truck mode, so you can see a little bit of the truck mode. So moving on, we have Deluxe Bumblebee. This is arguably my favorite Bumblebee figure from any movie line that we've had so far, including Studio Series. There's just something about this Bumblebee that I really like. I think it really pretty well up until like the release of the 07, or rather the 77 Camaro from Studio Series that they then have since released 2 or 3 other times, because it was like, because that first version didn't have the bar through so the roof kept popping off in the middle of transformation, which was annoying. And of course I have the original version, so that's always going to be a problem with mine. I should have waited. But up until that release, I think this is probably the best Bumblebee figure we've ever got. There's just something about it that really toes the line between being a good-looking display figure and being close to the character model from the film, and also being a good toy. Very, very sturdy. The parts move around very easily. He stands up pretty well. There's not really parts that slide around. He's not top-heavy or anything. The backpack folds up pretty well. You can't even really see the backpack in this picture from the way I have it positioned. So, just a really solid figure. Also, this is a good point to bring up the kind of gimmick of this line, which was the mech tech weapons. Mech tech weapons were fun. Because they were kind of like little 2-in-1s. And the Voyagers, with the exception of Ironhide's weapon, most of them you could then lock into place. So they had the 2 different firing modes, which was really cool. The deluxe versions, of course, did not, unfortunately, have that. So you'd have to hold it for the second, and then when you let it go, then it would revert back to its original, which was a little annoying. I wish the deluxe versions also locked into place, but oh well. I know some people use like rubber bands to keep them locked into place, but it's like, well, now there's just a big rubber band on your gun, and it doesn't look good. So then we have Voyager Optimus Prime, a pretty good version of Optimus. Not perfect. Not perfect for sure, but I think this is a really good version of Prime. I really like his weapon that he comes with. The way that the gas tanks form up on his back, sort of kind of mimics his jetpack combo from this film. And yeah, I just really good figure of Optimus. I really like him a lot. I've seen some people, I don't think he's a lot of people's favorite version of Optimus in terms of toys. I've seen a lot of people go, that version was awful. It's like, I like it fine. It's not perfect. The legs do bend at a certain angle that you have to angle his hips at a certain place to make it, or otherwise he's just going to be looking either up or down all the time, and you have to find that sweet spot, which is a little bit annoying. But it's not awful. I really do like this version of Optimus. And of course, Optimus does have the kind of he's got the abs. He's got the abs this time around, as opposed to the last two versions, which is I don't know why they bothered to make that change because it's so small. But oh well. So yeah, I do like this version of Optimus. He's fun to mess around with even today. So. Moving on, I guess I'll go ahead and talk about the twins just really quick. I do have both of the twins, Mudflap and Skids, and I didn't mention them earlier because I kind of went over them 2 years ago when I talked to Revenge of the Fallen, but of course the twins did not appear in Dark of the Moon like they were originally supposed to, even though they did get toys made of them for Dark of the Moon, and we did see them very briefly in a few shots in the final film when they were driving into Nest. Of course, they were supposed to originally have been killed off by Sentinel Prime during his betrayal, and they got removed from the film because of all the backlash towards them from their role in Revenge of the Fallen, making them some of the mini characters that just disappear with no explanation, never to be seen again. So these are definitely not the best toys. I like having them just because it's like it is that fun little thing as well. They were supposed to be in the film, then they got cut, but then they still got toys, so it's kind of a nice collector's item thing for me. It's like I still got them, but I don't really ever turn them into robot mode. These figures for me are pretty much exclusively vehicle modes now because and I don't know if there's a way to fix this personally. For me to fix this, like with homemade remedies or something, but their arms just like don't stay on at all. They're gigantic left or right arm, depending on which twin you're talking about. That just for whatever reason, well, hold on, no, maybe it's just Skids that has this problem for me. No, Mudflap's fine actually because of the way he's built, but Skids for sure. His big arm. Whenever he's transformed in robot mode, it just like dangles in the socket. It's a ball socket that it's in, and it just dangles. And so yeah, I just keep them in their vehicle forms for display because then I have the Revenge of the Fallen, Mudflap, and Skids for robot mode display. So yeah, there's the twins, and then here we have Studio Series Ratchet, his Dark of the Moon version specifically, because I have both the 07 and Dark of the Moon versions. But what is fun about Studio Series Ratchet is that he is heavily based on the Dark of the Moon Deluxe figure that came out for Ratchet. It's mostly exactly the same. There's just like a couple different things that I think it's a new mold, but they just went based it off the Dark of the Moon figure and just kind of like revamped it ever so slightly. Unfortunately, one area they did revamp it in that irks me is that on the Dark of the Moon figure, the whole like scaffolding thing on the top of his Hummer ambulance thing, that would all fold up onto his back and give him a much cleaner backpack. Or with the Studio Series version, that doesn't fold up, so it just dangles there at the bottom. And you can see it there. You can see the light bar in between his knees. And so which is super annoying. It's like, why could the original do this, but then on this one you didn't do that, it's just annoying. But overall, pretty good figure. The Studio Series one did come with his gun, which which was nice. And since he's based on the original Dark of the Moon figure, he does still have ports that will hold mech tech weapons, which is cool because it's essentially the same figure. Now I will say this version of Ratchet that I have here is customized slightly, because if you go back and watch my review of him, I did say that he was lacking in the paint department somewhat on his legs and his headlamps. On his shoulders that the 2007 version that came out from Studio Series did have. But then when I was working on my Mandalorian helmet, I got some shiny silver paint, and so I just went and I was like, I'll just do this myself. And so I painted him up a little bit, and he looks much, much better. I really like the way he looks now. So I did before. It's just like, the feet, the legs were a little bare, and then I just went ahead and did the headlamps while I was at it. So yeah, good figure. I really like this Ratchet, and I like the Ratchet redesign overall from Dark of the Moon as well. I don't really know why they decided. I guess it's like, all right, this is the third movie, time to change the design a little bit so we can sell a new toy. It's not exactly the same again or something like that, but oh well. So, and then last but not least, we have the original Dark of the Moon Sideswipe Deluxe figure with his great big rifle thing that then you push the thing and then a giant blade pops out of it because Sideswipe has blades. And this is a good figure. I've always liked this figure. I know a lot of people prefer the Revenge of the Fallen Deluxe Sideswipe. But this one I feel like has the more simpler transformation, which for my uses back in 2011, 2012, 2013, back when I was doing Transformers versus Lego Star Wars ages ago now, I'm old. It was a much simpler transformation. It was easier for me to work with in terms of my not great stop motion skills at the time. So yeah, good figure. I like him, and I was kind of sort of tempted to get the Studio Series version of him, but I went ahead and passed on it. But now that the Revenge of the Fallen version is going to be coming out, along with Jolt, I think I'm going to pick both of them up. And then also not pictured here because I don't have them yet, but I don't know if I will have them or not. But I do indeed plan on picking up the Studio Series Dino, because there was never a Dino figure released for Dark of the Moon because Ferrari did not want to license out the car for merchandise, which was unfortunate. They allowed it to be used in the film, but they did not allow it to be used for merchandising, which was unfortunate. So we never got an official Dino release. When Age of Extinction came out, we did get a Dino figure from the Takara line, but it was a remold slash repaint of Revenge of the Fallen Sideways, and then he got some new arm blades that came with. But that was not close like at all, but it was the closest we could get at the time. Cut to now, Studio Series, we have one. It's the vehicle form is not exact, but it's the closest that Hasbro could get, and I really commend their effort on that. And so I will be making sure to pick that up, because that is the interesting thing to mention about the Dark of the Moon toy line, is that for the first time, I think it was the first Transformers movie line to not have all of its figures released in the United States. I'm pretty sure that Movie 1 and Revenge of the Fallen toy line was both released in the United States and elsewhere. We got everything in both places. And by both places, I mean Japan, overseas, anywhere that's not the U.S., essentially. But then Dark of the Moon, there was stuff that came out overseas and never came out here. Wheeljack / Q. I want to say Leadfoot, which is ironic because Leadfoot would have been a Target exclusive. But he was never released in Target. I don't know if Target exists outside the United States, but he was definitely released in Japan. I know that. And Soundwave, never released in the United States, which really irked me because I wanted the Soundwave. I wanted the Soundwave and Wheeljack actually, but never came out in the United States, which irked me. But that is a very good segue to move into the Decepticons. And we will go ahead and start with Studio Series Soundwave, because thanks to Studio Series, and I talked about this in my review that you can go back and watch for Studio Series Dark of the Moon Soundwave, is that, they did finally release a Dark of the Moon Soundwave in the United States, and I was very, very happy with that. Even came with a little laser beak to perch there on his arm, as you can see. So, really happy that I was able to finally pick him up and kind of complete my core Dark of the Moon Decepticon cast. So that was nice, because Soundwave was like the one I was always missing. I don't have a Dark of the Moon Starscream, but that's because I have a Revenge of the Fallen Starscream, and there wasn't really too much different between them in terms of design. Now, the toys were different, yes. And I did not pick up the original deluxe because I did not like the downgrade in size at the time. Because I just felt it was a little weird going from Revenge of the Fallen Starscream, which was a Voyager, and then Movie 1 Starscream, which is a Voyager, and now all of a sudden he's a deluxe. Now, looking at reviews at the time, I'm like, okay, this transformation looks pretty good. But it's just so small. I don't like that it's so small. And then the chest was all gappy and stuff, so I didn't really care for it. Cut to 2018, 2019, somewhere in there. The Studio Series comes out, and then Revenge of the Fallen Starscream gets a release. And then after his Movie 1 version came out from Studio Series, and it was a upscaled version of the Dark of the Moon figure mold with a couple additions in there to make the chest less hollow. And I love the mold. It's like I said, it looked like a good mold. It's just a little gappy, but then they scaled it up and did that, and I'm happy with it. But I unfortunately did miss. I decided I wanted it too late. I did unfortunately miss out on Revenge of the Fallen Studio Series Starscream. Because I had the Movie 1 version, which is like, okay, I'm good. I have a version of Revenge of the Fallen Starscream from the original Toyline. But then I really kind of got looking at that saw blade hand he came with. I'm like, maybe I do want this. And it's the same mold, but the art or the decoration on him is the paint and everything is different enough. Maybe I do want him, but by that point it was too late. So unfortunately, that's a figure I missed out on. But oh well, like I said, I do have a version of Revenge of the Fallen / Dark of the Moon Starscream. Anyway, but so I did not include Studio Series Starscream here because he is based on his Movie 1 design and not his Movie 2 or 3 design. So I did not include him here. But speaking of Studio Series, I do have a little duplicate action going on here because, as you can see, there's two Shockwaves. I have the original Voyager Shockwave from the original Dark of the Moon toy line, and I also have Studio Series Shockwave. So I went over direct comparisons a little bit more in my review of Studio Series Shockwave, which you can go back and watch if you do want a little more in-depth there. But big improvement. Definitely a figure that needed some improvement on. The original Shockwave from Dark of the Moon is not a bad toy by any stretch of the imagination, but it is something that I would call a toy first and foremost. And like with a couple Dark of the Moon figures, I mean, maybe it's just the way I have the upper legs positioned, but Shockwave and Optimus, for whatever reason, it's just one of those things where you have to position the legs a certain way, in my experience anyway, or else they're always going to be looking up, or they're like right at the sky, or they're going to be looking straight down. And there is a little sweet spot that you have to get their legs in for them to be looking straight ahead. But in terms of a first attempt for Shockwave, for that Shockwave design, not bad. I'm glad that the Dark of the Moon version eventually came out because I mean, that is the nice thing about the Studio Series figure, is that it is essentially the CG model in toy form, exactly, without any compromises like the original Dark of the Moon version had to make because it was a toy. But the Studio Series version is a toy too, but it's definitely made more in mind with collectors, and they've learned a lot over the 10+ years of making these movie toys with the Bay designs. So honestly, they announced Studio Series, and that's what got, and was like, oh, okay, it's going to be kind of cool to be able to get a second chance on some of these figures. But Shockwave win, that's what got my mouth watering from moment one. So that's the Shockwaves taken care of, and then I put Sentinel Prime here instead of with the Autobots because he is the arch villain of the movie, so it works that he goes here. Decent figure, this Voyager from 2011. Not the best. The backpack is very stiff and rigid. I think from looking at the pictures I've seen of the Studio Series version of Sentinel, he does do a better job with the backpack, but and with a lot of molding details, it does look like an upgrade. But I just wasn't interested enough to get another Sentinel Prime, so I left him on the shelf. Actually, I don't even think I've ever seen Sentinel Prime on a shelf. But it's not one I was interested in, so I never searched for him, so to speak. So, but an interesting thing to note about my copy of Sentinel here is that his weapon is broken. Unfortunately, I don't know how it happened, because his little mech tech weapon, it would you can see some of the switches and stuff there, and it would kind of I don't know how to describe it, but it would push out, fold out, something like that, and then it would be a larger cannon. Well, the top part of that, and you can see that it's distinctly missing on there because there's supposed to be another plate on top. That just snapped off, and it was not you can snap it back in piece. It just snapped off one day, and that was that. So unfortunately, that weapon is broken. But I mean, that's one of the very few accessories or Transformers themselves that I have that is like just completely, that is broken or deteriorated or something in my 10 plus years of collecting Transformers at this point. So I feel like I've got a pretty good track record, so it's not that big of a deal. So then moving on, we have Dark of the Moon Voyager Megatron. I don't understand why people say that the Studio Series leader Megatron is an upgrade over this guy. I mean, yeah, he has accurate hands now, where one is the claw hand and the other is the other hand, a more traditional hand. But I say this original figure all the way because I took one look at that leader class Dark of the Moon Megatron from Studio Series, and I went, no, I'm sticking with what I've got, because the legs. Oh my gosh, the legs are horrendous. I don't know. I mean, the legs on this one are pretty good. They're not perfect, but they're pretty good. And honestly, I think they do a pretty good job of mimicking what's in the film, where the designers on the Studio Series Dark of the Moon Megatron, I guess they were so preoccupied in getting there, like everything above the knees looking good, that then they made, they just turned his legs into where everything in the truck form folds up, and it looks awful. I was also not a big fan of the cloth cape. I just thought it looked really tacky, where, this is like just a gigantic plastic thing, but it retains the look of I think it retains the look of what they were going for a little bit better than that cloth thing that came with the leader. So I think that's an unpopular opinion, but I just did not like the look of that leader class Dark of the Moon figure at all. I will say there is one way I will get that figure, and that is if I ever go to Orlando Studios and go on the Transformers ride, because they did a repaint of him without the stupid cloth cape thing as that version of, because that's the CG model that they use for Megatron on the ride. So if I ever go there, I will dish out the 50 or so, however much it is, dollars to pick up that figure as my souvenir for going. And it's like, and it'll also be justifiable, because it's like, it's a collector's item. It's you can't just buy this in any regular old store. It's a little different. It comes with a couple different exclusive things, so it's a collector's item thing. So that will be the only way I get that version of Megatron. But for right now, and I don't know if I ever will go, and even if I do go eventually, that figure may not exist anymore. But for right now, for sure, I'm definitely fine with what I've got. So then moving on to our last couple figures here, we have Dark of the Moon Deluxe Barricade, and oh my gosh, now this guy was an upgrade. This is one of the Transformers figures I have ever been the most excited about, because it was such an obvious upgrade from the original 2007 Deluxe. Smaller, yes. But, again, it's the evolution of the tricks that the engineers at Hasbro were learning to be able to pull off when it came to these very complex Michael Bay realistic looking robot models from the films. And it's like, and the thing that really got me with this Barricade was like, he has hands! Oh, he's got hands! Because the original 2007 version does not have hands. He's just kind of got these big claw grabber things that have hands printed on the inside, which was really dumb, I thought. And it's like, ugh. But it's like, first attempts. So I don't know what it was with some of the 2007 toys and just not really being able to do hands very well. But this Barricade was definitely an upgrade. The only thing about him that I don't like is the mech tech weapon he comes with. It's just super dumb. It's just a little thing that you flip a switch and then a claw shoots out of the gun instead of lasers or something, and then it folds back in, and then it's a minigun. It's big, it's bulky, it's ugly. I don't like it. But Barricade overall, good figure. So moving on here, we have Crankcase, and then next to him we have Berserker from the Last Night toy line, which I included him here because Berserker, yes, is a character from The Last Knight, but his CG model is just one of the dreads from the film from Dark of the Moon that they had turned into a. I'm pretty sure. Dreadbot was the VW van that Grimlock chomped. That's right. Berserker stayed in prison. He never actually even got out. So they didn't have a. So I guess they just assumed that he would transform into one of the Chevy SUVs from Dark of the Moon. So in a way, Berserker really is just, what I would kind of consider to be, because the Last Night Toyline was sort of kind of like the proto studio series. They were gearing up for studio series in a lot of ways, I felt like, with that line, especially with some of the re-releases of figures, which kind of made sense at the time, from Age of Extinction. But the first one that really made me think, it's like, oh, we're kind of getting a second chance here. With a couple of these characters, which, that happens when the movies come out. But Berserker was like, oh, wow, that we're getting, this is a second chance at a new version of Crankcase from Dark of the Moon, a movie that came out 5 years ago or something like that at the time. So that's kind of interesting. I wouldn't mind if they did this with more figures. And then Studio Series became a thing. I was like, oh, yay, I'm happy, but my wallet is not. So Berserker I have in his vehicle mode. It's between the two of them, there's a perfect figure here, because and maybe I should have flip-flopped them for display here in this image that I have on screen, because Crankcase from Dark of the Moon, robot mode, awful. Car mode, pretty good. Berserker, car mode, awful. Robot mode, pretty good. So between the two of them here is a perfect figure. Neither of them is a bad figure on their own, I don't think. But it's like they definitely do one thing better than the other. So yeah, and then of course going back to the whole Berserker and then Studio Series thing, is that then they would then of course use the exact same mold with some very slight tweaks for Crankcase and Crowbar for Studio Series, which is almost exactly the same figures, just a couple different paint things, and then we've still yet to receive a hatchet. So and I think that's pretty much it for the toys. So pretty good toy line. I really enjoyed these figures. They were always fun to see on the shelves. The packaging was really good. Of course, one of the gimmicks with some of the other toys that I didn't pick up was the whole Stealth Force gimmick that we saw in this film, and then of course was never mentioned again. Stealth Force was a really interesting idea. It's one of those, and again, it's one of those things, again with The Last Night, where Bumblebee does that whole thing where he transforms his arm into his cannon when they're being chased by a barricade to shoot him, and then his head is just like sitting there on top of his hood. It's like, Michael Bay, did you guys forget that Stealth Force was a thing? Because honestly, it would have been cool if Stealth Force had come back for that one scene, because it would have been, it would have been a moment where it would have come in handy. You just transform into Stealth Force and then be blasting with the roof cannon and speed off again. But I don't know. I guess this shot of Mark Wahlberg hanging out of the car was cooler or something. I don't know. So yeah, I think that's all I have to say about Transformers Dark of the Moon. And so, the video game came out as well. It was fine. It came out between War for Cybertron and Fall of Cybertron. Multiplayer was okay. I didn't really like the map selection, but there were a couple cool things about it. Weirdly enough, it had live action Nolan North in it, which is a little odd. Reused some character models from the Revenge of the Fallen game, which was nice, but other than that, I don't really have much to say about the video game. I don't think I talked about the video games in either of these videos. I stuck mostly to the movies and the toy lines, but so that's pretty much it. All I have to say, I think, and my voice is kind of going as I've been talking for a while. I think I've talked like double the length with this video than I did Revenge of the Fallen. So if you have watched this entire thing, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed my rambling thoughts on Dark of the Moon. And if you didn't watch the whole thing, but you've kind of skimmed through to hit different points and you've gotten here anyway, thanks for doing that too. And then if you stopped 15 minutes in, well, thanks for watching at least 15 minutes, but maybe I shouldn't thank you because you're not listening to this anyway. So that will be it for this video. And like I said, Transformers Knights of Cybertron will resume eventually in October sometime. Again, sorry for the wait, but I think it will be worth it. So yeah, that is it for this video. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, all that great stuff. Remember to follow me on Twitter and Instagram. Those links are in the description below, and I'll see you guys next time. Thank you for watching, and goodbye. And I guess next time is going to be like in 3 years for Age of Extinction, isn't it? So that's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to that.